How many of you have seen charts that look exactly like this? Maybe something a bit more reasonable like this one. Or maybe something like this. It's basically pure noise. It's garbage trading is what I'd call it. It's technical analysis paralysis. Now don't get me wrong, the simple moving averages are fine if you're doing long-term trading. You know, the 150 moving average over the 200 is a perfectly fine way of long-term investing. You're finding a nice bullish uptrend, great, good for you. If you're a short-term trader or you're a day trader, these lagging average indicators are useless. They're not going to tell you anything you don't already know. If you look at this chart here, do you really need the 200 or the 100 moving average to tell you it's bullish? Do you need the RSI to sit at 70 to tell you it's bullish? I mean, I was going to say overbought, but again, you don't use these indicators to indicate a buy or a sell. You don't sell just because the RSI is sitting at 70 or 80, like a textbook will tell you. It's just not reality. These indicators are all lagging, they're delayed, they're averaged out, they're smoothed, they're effectively useless. They're good visual tools, they sort of tell you visually what's going on, but in terms of trading decisions, they're useless. So I noticed this amongst all the successful traders that I know. Whether it's someone like Nick Fabrio, who's kind of a more popular name in the ASX, as a day trader, I've seen his charts or whatever he posts, and it seems to be just the VWAP. I think the occasional trend line perhaps, and order book trading. Someone like Swingfish just uses the VWAP and trend lines. No moving averages, no MACDs, no RSIs, no lagging indicators. The thing with trend lines and the VWAP is that they're real time. They tell you real-time information as of right now. You open up any chart, the VWAP indicator will tell you the real-time average price. And the VWAP stands for volume-weighted average price, but really it's just a fancy way of saying average price. That's all it is. It factors in volume, which needs to happen. So it tells you the average price real-time. And that's useful because the VWAP is something that's used by industry. It's used by banks. It's used by miners. Banks will guarantee you certain currency at the VWAP price. They want to sell at the VWAP price because that's how they trade. It's not just a daily, not just a retail trading thing. It's not just something that we do. It's actually an industry used technical indicator. It's useful. You'll see a lot of action happening around the VWAP. The VWAP is basically something I'd consider critical to technical analysis. I haven't seen anyone that's successful that trades without it. And of course, without trend lines as well. So if you look at someone like Swingfish, probably the most successful Forex trader that I'm aware of. There are others, obviously, but this is the only person that I know that is public and live stream. In fact, is streaming right now. But he streams several hours a day. In this case, yesterday he streamed 12 hours. The day before that, 5 hours. And he shows exactly what he traded and at what percentages. And you'll see if we bring up this yellow dotted line here is the VWAP. The red trend line, and that's it. Every single chart that he has is VWAP and trend line. There is absolutely nothing else. And he runs a prop trading firm. A very successful guy, very successful trader, and is able to demonstrate his craft with purely two technical analysis tools, VWAP and trendline. In fact, it's something that I use myself. I just use trend lines and VWAP. Occasionally I'll use the MACD to spot divergences in the long term, but I would never base a trading or execute a trade based on the divergences. Never. It's just a visual representation that tells me information. This yellow line here is the exponential moving average. I think it's like a time period of 7 or 8. It's just a visual tool. I would never execute a trade based on this yellow line. It's just visual information that I like to see. It helps me look at my charts. Now, I live tweet some days if I'm actually doing something, then I'll live tweet on the occasion what I'm doing on the US, and exclusively the US markets. So I trade the SPX, or the US 500, and this is pretty much my technique. I live tweeted every entry I made on last night, and I set my targets, and I demonstrated that this is how I do my technical analysis. So these blue arrows here represent my buy orders, and the red represents the sell. So I had 2 buy orders, and I sold them both at the same time here. So I had 20 lots and 20 lots, and so I made it, I think it was like 1,700 on this trade alone, and I had a very tight stop loss. I was risking $300 to make $1,750, and all it was breaking out. It faked a breakout here, and it broke out on the upside of this blue trend line and was heading towards the VWAP. It's that simple. That was my trade. That's it. I was risking $300 to make $1,700 on this trade. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to short at the VWAP, because you can see the action happens at the VWAP. It determines what's going to happen next, typically. Now the US 30, which is the Dow Jones Index, has a bit more pull and weight. So the US 500 follows the US 30, or the Dow Jones, and it's more dominant. But that doesn't mean the technical analysis doesn't work on the US 500. So I prefer this one. So you can see here, it was bouncing around. I was expecting, I bought 2 long positions here on the VWAP, and I identified a sort of almost horizontal trend line here, and I stocked up for a 3rd time. So I bought 20 lots 3 times, and you can see where I sold out. I sold out right here. You can see just how tight my stop loss is. And this is how much I lost. $730 loss. And I was looking at, so I think I was looking at 2.6K was my profit target. So I risked 700 in order to attempt to make 2.6K. Now I was pretty confident in that one, but it broke down and it failed, and that's fine. So I identified that it broke down from the VWAP and it broke down from the trend line, and I shorted it. So I immediately shorted it after I closed my long position, because that's what was happening. It's that simple. And I couldn't identify a target while I was trading this one. I think I spotted this near horizontal here, and it didn't break to the downside, so I just closed my position. And that's it. So I just went from one here and one here, so 2 shorts, and closed it out. So I made $38 from one of them and $298, and I think there was a 3rd trade here, and no, sorry, that's further up. So it swung back up, and I decided, if I extend that out, it's snapping to the chart. So you can see this trend line here is still relevant, and it meets up with the VWAP. So I shorted it, but I identified that it wasn't actually working. The volumes didn't come in and push it to the downside like I was expecting. So I closed it out, and I made just a measly $58. That's fine. Recognizing the move that happened, that it refused to sell down at the VWAP, I decided to go long immediately after, and then I had a trend line target, which is this trend line here that I was initially looking to break out of to the upside. And that was it. I closed my position. That's short-term trade there. Made $238, and I think later on in the day I made $60. But that's it. That was it. I made 1.9K trading for about an hour, and then I just went to sleep, because there's no point over trading. Once you make profit, a reasonable profit, your target for the day, that's it. So that's how simple my technical analysis is. It works perfectly fine. I occasionally throw in Fibonacci, but that's it. I use 3 indicators. I occasionally use MACD for divergences. Again, it just tells me information, but I'd never execute a trade on it. I execute trades on trend lines, VWAP, and Fibonacci. That's it. It really can be that simple. If you see people with complicated charting, they're either showing off or they just don't know what they're doing and want to look cool. I never really understood it. I mean, it looks impressive. I remember when I first started trading and doing technical analysis, and I was fiddling around with all these indicators, and I was trying to find the golden indicator. We all do that. We all try and find these combinations of indicators that just will be the one that makes us profitable. I went through them all. I went through every indicator under the sun. It really is just this simple. None of them work. They're all delayed. They're all averaged out. They're all smoothed, and they just tell you delayed information. And that's not good for scalping. The only 3 real-time pieces of information you have are trend lines, VWAP, and Fibonacci. So I hope you implement, or at least look into this kind of trading technique. Thanks, guys.